Practicing Dhamma has to start with facing yourself. It's not a philosophy to be talked about. It doesn't start with studying concepts and words or reading a great many texts. Nor is it practicing Dhamma to just go and listen to a teacher or to talk about Dhamma, to talk about Buddhism. All these things can be good, but they are supports to the main effort of Dhamma, which starts with facing yourself. By facing yourself, I mean looking inside yourself, investigating yourself to find out what are your faults, what are the things that make you do wrong, either in thought, in words, in action. Where are the places where there is lack, where you could be better? We all know the saying, nobody's perfect, but inside we all kind of secretly believe, nobody's perfect except me. Me, I have no problem. And whenever anyone suggests or points out that, hey, you have this wrong with you, we will immediately get offended, not want to believe them, not want to think that it's true. How come, if we believe that nobody's perfect, how come we don't know that we ourselves are not perfect? The attitude that Buddhism takes to this is that when we have these faults inside ourselves, which we do, we all have things that are wrong with us. Then the right thing to do is to remove these wrong things in us. But first we have to see them as they are. See all of them. And we have quite a few more of them, most of us, than we think. But the question on which this subject is mainly based is, how do you face yourself without falling into a depression? Because many of us do see some things wrong with us, but what happens is that when we see them, it just makes us dislike ourselves, or even have hatred towards ourselves. We can really beat ourselves up over things that we have done wrong, which might actually be wrong, but when we beat ourselves up, we're doing more wrong to ourselves. So how do we do it? How do we face ourselves? The answer is that when we see a fault in ourselves, we should be full of joy. We should be joyful. When we first hear this, I know for myself, when I first asked this question and I was told this answer, that you should be full of joy, I was very puzzled. I don't understand. How can I be joyful when I see that I'm such a terribly flawed human being, such a useless, such a bad person, I was telling myself these things all the time. And now somebody told me that when I saw faults in myself, I should be joyful. So I didn't understand. But of course the reason that you do feel joy, if you understand properly when you see a fault in yourself, because now you can remove it, now you can correct it. Before it was there all the time, but it was hidden or not clear. And when you see it, now you can work to remove it. Sometimes even just seeing it, just by seeing it, it is almost 98% removed or solved, loses all of its power. Sometimes it's a very strong habit of the mind and it takes time and effort to correct it. But either way, we can remove it. And when we see it, this is the starting point to be able to remove it. Ajahn gave an example for this about one time when there was a kind of funny smell in his house and it started to smell worse and worse over the days and they couldn't find the source of the smell. They were searching everywhere. Until finally, by following the smell, he and Eric were able to find that there were some dead mice underneath a bathtub, which was blocked off by a wall. They had to remove the wall to be able to find the dead mice. And now, what should they do and how should they react? Should they start to cry, to say, oh no, there was this in the house all the time. How could it be that Ajahn had dead mice in his house? It's terrible, it's too terrible, I can't look at it, and cover up the wall and pretend it's not there. No, of course not. They should be happy because now, finally, there was this funny smell that was bothering us for so long, and now finally we found the source. Now we can remove it, we can clean, we can put disinfectant, we can even put perfume, we can find the hole where they got in so they can't get in again, and it will be solved. So we should react in just the same way when we find a fault in ourselves that we hadn't seen before, or that we hadn't seen so clearly, because whether we see it or not, it is still there inside of us and it does create its own bad smell. We can't completely hide from it, even if we wanted to. And the reason that we don't see it like this is quite simple, which is simply that we always see these things as being a fixed part of ourselves. I am this thing. If I have a tendency, for example, to be, let's say, to be a bit lazy or a bit careless about things, or to be jealous, or to be easily resentful of other people, or to have whatever is our own form of selfishness, when we see this, we think, I am this lazy person, or I am this jealous person, I am this selfish person. What we have to understand is that these things are not us, and they're not even a fixed part of ourselves. Let's say jealousy, where is it? Where do you carry it around with yourselves? Where do you store it? Do you have it, jealousy, stored in a kind of a cupboard in the back of your mind? In reality, it's actually just a bad habit. It doesn't exist except in the moment when it arises. And when it's a strong bad habit, it means that it arises a lot and easily. But it's still just a habit, and it can be changed like any other habit. It can be broken, but that takes work. And the other thing is that we also need to know how to break this habit. We need to know that there is a way, a practice to remove it completely, to go against it. Another example is that Ajahn is diabetic, and when he first found out that he was diabetic, his doctor gave him the diagnosis, and he was smiling, laughing, full of joy, so happy. And the doctor was really bewildered at this, amazed. He said, "You're the first patient that has ever had this kind of reaction to being told they are diabetic." But for Ajahn, it really was a joy to finally find out, this is my problem. Because for a long time he had had extremely low energy, he wasn't able to move easily, and he had other physical problems, physical suffering. But he didn't have all of the symptoms of diabetes, because normally you have a lot of emotional highs and lows, but this he didn't have because he was removing all the time, so he was just equanimous and calm. So emotionally he was stable, but physically he had no energy. And this, he was confused because he knew he was not lazy, and yet now every kind of physical work felt like the most enormous effort, the most impossible task. So when he heard the diagnosis that he was diabetic, he was overjoyed because, okay, this explains all of these weird symptoms I've been having, and now I can ask the doctor, okay, so what do I do about it? What medicine do I have to take? What procedure do I have to follow? What diet do I have to follow? So he could do something about it. So again, this is the same for us in our mind. When we face ourselves and see ourselves as we really are, when we see the faults in ourselves, if we understand correctly that this fault is simply a bad automatic habit of the mind, and also that there is a way, a practice to remove this bad habit, to stop it completely, then of course we will be joyful. Like Ajahn with his diabetes, or like finding finally the source of the bad smell in the house. Now we can do something about it. But most of us prefer to live with this bad smell in the house and sort of put a lot of perfume to cover it instead of going to find the source, because it's too unpleasant to see. If we want to correct ourselves, we can't accept to do this. We have to be brave to go search for the source of the smell. It doesn't matter how unpleasant it will be. At that point, we can remove it.